Well, Sky's chief political correspondent Jon Craig is in Thame near Henley now. Morning to you, Jon. So we're still waiting for the result, but it's pretty much a foregone conclusion, we gather.
But on Gordon Brown's first anniversary as Labour leader, I think we can predict confidently humiliation for the Prime Minister, because all the signs here are in Henley. We're here at the Thame Leisure Centre. But in this by-election in the Henley constituency, it looks pretty certain that Labour are not only going to come third, but they are going to lose their deposit. That would be a humiliation for Mr Brown on this anniversary. To save your deposit in a by-election, you need 5% of the votes. All the signs are that the Conservatives have cruised to a comfortable victory here. Their majority will be well down. The majority Boris Johnson won at the last election was just under 13,000. The turnout, we believe, is around about the 50% mark here, so inevitably the Conservative majority will be down. Liberal Democrats in second place. There is a possibility that Labour could even suffer more humiliation by being pushed into fourth place, possibly behind UKIP or more likely the Green Party. Now, coming third is pretty bad. Losing your deposit is pretty bad. Those have happened before in fights between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems in by-elections, but it's not very often that Labour comes fourth in a by-election, and that really would be the ultimate, possibly the ultimate humiliation for Gordon Brown, pushed into fourth place if that were to happen here in this by-election. It's looking good for the Conservatives, although of course it's a safe seat. Not so good for the Liberal Democrats on an evening, of course, where a poll in the Daily Telegraph shows the Lib Dem support down. Very bad for Labour, losing their deposit and possibly pushed into fourth place.
OK, Sky's chief political correspondent Jon Craig, I'm sure we'll be speaking to you lots throughout the night as we wait for this result.
Polls have closed in the by-election in Henley in Oxfordshire. The vote was triggered, of course, when the Conservative MP Boris Johnson stepped down to become London Mayor. Let's go to Henley and speak to our political correspondent David Thompson. A true blue seat for many years. David, what's the turnout been like?
Well, the turnout seems to be not bad, actually, for a by-election. People are putting it at about 55%, which is a bit less. The last general election turnout was 67%. But 55% is pretty good for a by-election, especially one where, in truth, there's not a great deal at stake. You know, the Conservatives are expected to win this seat. And what the other parties are saying, we're approaching endgame now, I think, really. That if you look behind me, counting is going on. They've got the last of the ballot boxes in, and we're expecting a result perhaps just before 2 o'clock. And, you know, at the moment, whereas when I was talking to you about an hour or so ago, people were being very, very cagey in their predictions and sort of saying, oh, well, I don't know, it's too close to call, etc., etc. Now they're actually being quite bullish, and the Lib Dems are saying that they think they've had a good night, and that the Tories haven't done as well as they ought to, given where they are in the polls nationally. Equally, the Conservatives are pretty confident they're going to hold this. So we should know the result in about, I'd guess, about an hour and a half's time, when all will be revealed.
OK, David, more from you throughout the course of the night. David Thompson there.
Now, on Gordon Brown's first anniversary in Downing Street, a new poll reveals the extent of Labour's slump in the past 12 months. Polls closed a few hours ago in Henley-on-Thames. A by-election prompted, of course, by the departure of Boris Johnson to be the new Mayor of London. The results are expected shortly. Well, that was never likely to be anything other than a strong win for the Tories. But this morning's Daily Telegraph paints a grim picture for the Prime Minister when it comes to a general election. A year ago, when people were asked, who do you think will win the next election, 62% said Labour, only 18% said the Tories. Look at it now, 12 months on, the positions are almost a mirror image. When asked the same question in a poll by YouGov, just 16% think Labour will win, 67% saying that David Cameron's Conservatives are going to form the next government. Sky's chief political correspondent Jon Craig is in Thame near Henley. So, Jon, I don't think the people of Henley have probably ever seen the like, have they? 4 visits by David Cameron, 7 by Nick Clegg. There's obviously a lot of gain here.
And of course the numbers, as a result of all that intense activity by those party leaders, the numbers are going to look even worse for Gordon Brown than in that Daily Telegraph poll. With about half an hour to go, we're expecting the result here around about 1:30. This is how it looks. We know that the turnout is 50.5%. Now it is looking as though the Conservatives have won 55% or perhaps a bit more, nudging up towards 60%. The Liberal Democrats are around about the 30% mark. Labour Well, Labour sources are conceding that they have lost their deposit, and it is entirely possible here that Labour have not only lost their deposit, suffering that humiliation, they have to get 5% to save their deposit, but they may have been pushed into fourth place, possibly by the Green Party, we believe. Now, on the basis of 55% for the Tories and 30% for the Lib Dems, on the 50.5% turnout, that points to a Conservative majority here around about the 8,000 mark. Now that compares with Boris Johnson's majority of just under 13,000 back in 2005 at the general election. So we've got a lower turnout, lower Conservative majority. It looks as though the Conservative share of the vote is up. The Liberal Democrat share of the vote is also up, but Labour have been horrendously squeezed, lost their deposit, and on Gordon Brown's first anniversary in Downing Street may have been pushed into fourth place by the Green Party.
Well, Boris Johnson, obviously a very colourful character when he was there, and of course now he's the Mayor of London. But tell us a bit about the new candidate, because he's nothing like Boris Johnson, is he?
The new Conservative candidate and the man who is on course to take his seat at Westminster is John Howell. He is a wealthy businessman. He is an Oxfordshire County councillor. I have to say, when he arrived a few moments ago, he had the look of a man who had victory within his grasp. Nobody here is seriously doubting that John Howell will be the next MP for Henley. Of course, it's always said that they love a glamorous blonde here in Henley. They had Michael Heseltine as their MP for more than a quarter of a century. Boris Johnson has been the MP here since 2001. His majority actually went up between 2001 and 2005. In 2001, he was under 50%. 2005, he was above 50%. Looks as though the Tory share of the vote is going to go even higher. A little earlier on this evening, we talked to some voters here in this constituency, big constituency, not just the town of Henley. It's got the town of Thame and dozens of small Oxfordshire villages as well. This is what they told us about how they viewed this campaign.
The Labour has done a very good job of destroying the country.
Well, I actually think there will be a lot of people who will switch their vote from Labour to the Liberal Democrats. And then I think the information will be misinterpreted. And I think that people will say, oh, Labour are doing drastically. But in actual fact, I think they're changing because they know Labour don't stand a chance here. And perhaps it's a way of keeping the Conservatives out.
The thing that worries me is I think he's probably the best of the bunch. Because the Conservatives haven't really offered any ideas other than to sort of say we'll be greener and better. The Lib Dems are never really going to rule the country.
I think anybody can do better than what they're all doing, so...
As long as it stays how it is, it's been pretty good.
I think the Conservatives will get in.
And what do you think of Gordon Brown this year in power?
That's what I think of Gordon Brown.
Well, that was the views of some voters in Thame yesterday evening. Here in Thame Leisure Centre, we do expect the result 15, 20 minutes, perhaps certainly before 2 o'clock, we're told. A Labour lost deposit on Gordon Brown's first anniversary. Possibly Labour pushed into fourth place. Not the first time Labour have lost their deposit. There's been a string of by-elections, Winchester, Newbury, Christchurch, Romsey, Cheadle, where Labour have lost their deposit. And a certain by-election in Beaconsfield in 1982. Labour lost their deposit there. Candidate there, Tony Blair. Whatever happened to him?
Indeed. Right, John, we'll be right back to you as soon as that result comes in, so stay with us. Right, let's take you to Henley-on-Thames now, where we're getting the results of that election. That by-election, we're told the Conservatives have won with a majority of 19,000. That's more than 6,000 more than Boris Johnson in 2005. Let's go to Sky's chief political correspondent, Jon Craig, who's there, and hear what's happening. John, over to you.
Well, we've got a sensation here. The result is being declared here. And it looks very much as Labour has been pushed into fifth place behind the Green Party and the British National Party. Here is the result being declared.
52, and I hereby declare that Jon Michael Howell has been duly elected Member of Parliament for Henley constituency.
There you have it. There you have it, confirmation. John Howell, the Conservative, is home by more than 10,000. That is a majority of 10,116. But the sensation here is that on Gordon Brown's first anniversary as Prime Minister, Labour are in 5th place. We thought they might be in 4th. They're in 5th place. Let's listen to John Howell.
I'd also like to thank the police, the returning officer and all his staff. But most of all, I want to thank the people of South Oxfordshire for putting their trust in me and giving me the honour of representing them in the House of Commons. I'd also like to thank my predecessor, Boris, the only politician who is so popular that he doesn't even need a surname. His are going to be big shoes to fill, but what local people know about Boris is that aside from his UK newspaper columns, his TV appearances and his front-bench jobs, he's always a first-rate constituency MP. And as a local man, I'm determined to continue that dedicated service to our community. Today, the British public has sent a message to Gordon Brown: get off our backs, stop the endless tax rises, and help us cope with the rising cost of living. It's clear that the new Labour coalition is falling apart, and that the Conservatives under David Cameron's leadership are on the march. It is our agenda of giving people more opportunity and control over their own lives, of making families stronger and societies more responsible, of making Britain safer and greener that is setting the pace in politics now. Above all, at a time when the cost of living is going up, people want a government that is on their side instead of on their back. They know that it is the Conservative Party that is on their side. This election was one not just on national issues, but on local issues too.
Oh no, what he's saying there, that's the
I'm
majority.
determined to be a strong local voice for South
saying.
Oxfordshire in Parliament. I will campaign to protect threatened local services. I will fight against greenbelt development, and I will stand up for our best values. I know that you, the people of South Oxfordshire, have invested great responsibility in me, and I will not let you down.
Well, there you have the victory speech from John Howell. Jon Howell, the Conservative, has comfortably won here. He has won with a majority of 10,116. But the real sensation here is Labour. This is the Liberal Democrat candidate now. The sensation here, Labour in 5th place. Not 3rd, not 4th, but 5th place. Labour have been pushed into 5th place. They've lost their deposit, beaten by the Green Party and the British National Party. For the share of the vote, I'm joined actually by Chris Grayling, who's run the Conservative campaign. Chris Grayling, just come a little closer to the microphone. We just heard your candidate say this is a message to Gordon Brown: get off our back, stop the tax rises. What do you think this means on Gordon Brown's first anniversary as Prime Minister?
Well, it's an awful anniversary present for him. It reflects, I think, the disillusion that you'll see around the country about the way this government is leading us at the moment. For the governing party to become 5th in a by-election, well, I can't think of it happening before. Quite an extraordinary situation. And it's a real bad news message for the Prime Minister, and it's a real sign that Britain wants change. But we shouldn't also lose sight of the fact that tonight has been a really bad night for the Liberal Democrats. They threw their full by-election machine at this by-election. This is the first time in 25 years that they've been beaten soundly by the Conservatives in a by-election, and it's a real sign, I think, that they're on the back foot as well. Bad news for Nick Clegg and bad news for Gordon Brown.
What have you had a chance yet to work out the share of the vote? I know that at the last general election, Boris Johnson had 53.5%. Is your vote up in percentage terms?
We've got about 57.5% of the vote, so about a 4% increase. The Liberal Democrat vote has barely changed, and of course the Labour vote has plummeted. So what you've seen is a switch from the Labour Party to the Conservatives, much as we saw in Crewe and Nantwich a month ago.
We move, I suppose the by-election circus, if one can use that word, moves on to Holton Price and Howden now. David Davis doesn't have an opponent. Is that a bit of a pointless by-election, David Davis's by-election?
I think it's a very different kind of election. What David's doing is fighting an election on a point of principle, trying to send a message to the country and a message to Parliament about a very important issue, a serious challenge we face as a nation, the erosion of our civil liberties. So it's a very different kind of campaign. It won't be the same kind of by-election as this one, but I think the principles are no less important.
You've probably got two years, realistically, now to the next general election. You're winning by-elections, you've won Crewe, you've won here. But of course, still 2 years to go, anything can happen. We all know Labour were up in the polls last year, you were down. things can change. Are you a bit worried you peaked too soon?
It's a small step in the right direction. We've got 2 years, we're taking nothing for granted. But this is definitely a small step in the direction towards beating Labour at the next election. And we've just got to keep on working at it.
Chris Grayling, not often I shove you aside, but I'm going to right now. Here is John Howell. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
John Howell, Member of Parliament. You are live on Sky News. Your first interview as a Member of Parliament. Just come round, face the camera a little bit more. Why do you think you've done so well here? Obviously, it's been a two-horse race with the Liberal Democrats. What do you think you did to do so well here? And I think you've pushed your share of the vote up, we understand.
Well, we gave a very clear message in this, what has been a very positive campaign for us, that we wanted to send a message to Gordon Brown. We sent one at Crewe and Nantwich over the 10p tax ban. We've sent one now over about the rise in road tax that's planned for next year. This is a campaign that has kept Gordon Brown on the run, and that's what people have appreciated.
What were the key things that people said to you during this campaign about why they wanted to stick with the Tories rather than, for example, go to the Liberal Democrats, as they do sometimes in by-elections?
Well, I think people on the doorstep were saying that the Conservatives have changed. They trust the Conservatives. They like the message they hear. They liked the way we stand up for them. And most importantly, they identified with a local man who is a Conservative, who understands their problems, is part of their community, and they know is going to deliver.
You say you're a local man. People will no doubt be asking, who is John Howell? He's not a famous name like Boris Johnson. I hear you're a millionaire businessman who went into politics after retiring at 50. Is that right? Tell us a bit about yourself.
I have lived in the constituency for 20 years. I brought my family up here. For the last 4 years, most of my time has been spent being a county councillor for a large part of this constituency. And the people who I've represented on that knew very well that I go the extra mile for them. And that, I think, is a message that went out to the rest of the constituency.
And what is the message that you are going to take to Parliament from the Henley constituency as a result of this campaign in this election, which, of course, you won very comfortably?
The message is that we want the Labour government to get off our backs. We want things to be done about the cost of living, and we need to make sure that there is a U-turn on the road tax.
John Howell, thank you very much. Congratulations. Let's get a Labour point of view here. John Howell, thank you very much.
John, congratulations.
Joined now by Martin Salter, Labour MP, who ran this campaign. Not third, not fourth, but fifth. This is a humiliation, an abject humiliation for Gordon Brown on his first anniversary. You have been beaten by the Green Party and the British National Party. What has gone wrong?
It's a grim result. Our vote was squeezed. The third parties always get squeezed. We've been squeezed very, very badly tonight. It's very much in line with what happened in Winchester when, under Tony Blair's leadership, we went on to win the next general election, but we saw our vote squeezed even more. At the Winchester by-election, John, we were down to 1.7% of the vote. I am very, very disappointed that we'd come in fifth place. We did hope to do a bit better than that. But I think what was interesting is this was a nasty campaign. It was marked by personal attacks. I thought the Lib Dem campaign was very, very dirty indeed. That turned an awful lot of people off.
Oh,
and I'm not making that as an excuse for
by-elections, all these things always happening by. Let me put to you a point that both John Howell made, both in his speech and in his interview a moment ago. He said the message to Gordon Brown is get off our backs, stop these tax rises. He said the first thing he's going to do when he gets to Parliament is campaign against Gordon Brown's road taxes. Surely this by-election has sent a message that people have had enough of some of Labour's tax rises, and that's why you've been beaten into fifth place here.
Well, it'd be very interesting if John Howell goes to Parliament and rewrites Conservative tax policy. At the moment, the Conservatives aren't telling us anything about where they would spend, where would they raise revenue. I think the problem that David Cameron and the Tories have got is they can win a by-election like Henley. I mean, that's as easy as falling off a bike. But they've still got to come forward with substance. They've still got to come forward with policies. And it's not going to be John Howell writing the next Conservative manifesto.
They won Crewe and Nantwich as well, which was a seat held by Gwyneth Dunwoody with a comfortable Labour majority. They're not just winning in rock-solid blue-chip Tory seats like Henley. They're taking seats off Labour in a safe Labour seat like Crewe and Nantwich as well. Tax seems to be the issue that voters are saying to Gordon Brown, enough is enough. That's what John Howell is saying tonight. Get off our backs, he said.
I can remember the Labour Party winning seats like mid-staffs and then John Major going on to win the 1992 election. By-elections are very rarely good guides to what's going to happen at the next general election. And I'm not sure it's about tax. I think it's as much about the cost of living, and a lot of that's down to the credit crunch, a lot of that's down to the collapse of the subprime mortgage market in America, a lot of that's down to global pressure and the increase in the price of fuel. When fuel goes up, then other commodities go up. It fuels inflation, and it's a huge challenge for the government. And of course we're going to reap a whirlwind from that at a by-election. We fully expect it to, particularly at a by-election like Henley, where we had absolutely no chance at all.
One final question, because I want to bring the Green candidate in a second. You say it's about the economy, but isn't it about Gordon Brown as well? There's a poll in today's Daily Telegraph which shows, it confirms the trend in recent polls. His personal ratings are terrible, and they are nothing like as high as Tony Blair's was. A year ago, Tony Blair left the House of Commons, was applauded by MPs of all parties. Here we are, 1 year on. Gordon Brown looks like a vote loser. You've confirmed that in Crewe and Nantwich, and been confirmed here in 5th place.
You can't have it both ways, John. I can go back to by-elections like Winchester, where we did worse than we did tonight under Tony Blair and went on to win a landslide victory. I know that Gordon Brown helped deliver the most successful economic years this country has seen since the Second World War. I also know that Labour's future is absolutely dependent upon our ability to turn the economy round, and I believe it's the experience of Gordon Brown that is going to do that. We've just got to hold our nerve through these tough times ahead of us.
Martin Salter, thank you very much. Let me bring in the Green Party candidate. It's Mark Stevenson. Now, you were third.
That's right.
You just beat I've got the figures here. You just beat the BNP, who were fourth, and you have beaten Labour.
And beaten Labour, absolutely.
Can you remember a time when the Green Party beat Labour in a parliamentary by-election? You perhaps can you? I don't know.
I must say I haven't particularly followed that.
I'm not sure I can recall a time when the Greens beat the Labour Party.
I think what it's indicative of is the fact that as a party we're really beginning to make progress nationally now in terms. I mean, I fully expect that we'll actually get some MPs elected at the next election because we're moving
under
up.
first past the post? I mean, you do under PR in, say, the London Assembly, but...
Yep. No, I mean, I think this is a good indication that that's the way. We are the only party in this constituency, absolute Tory stronghold, which has consistently, including the Tories, we're the only one that has consistently improved our vote over the last 3 elections here.
Why do you think people are voting Green when people are worried about fuel prices, the cost of filling up the family car, and energy's a real issue now, and people are more concerned about the cost of energy than perhaps about greener issues?
Well, I'm not sure that that's entirely true. I mean, I think that, you know, an immediate concern for people is the cost, but a lot of people are equally aware of the larger issues that are involved, and some of the ways in which Greens would help to tackle those things would actually make it either easier to do things without that cost because we'd reduce dependency on fuel, or equally that in some cases where people are not using a lot of fuel, because of the way that we change tax systems, they'd actually end up paying less money. So some people actually like our policies because from that point of view they would save money.
Mark Stevenson, thank you. Let me move to the Liberal Democrats. Nice talking to you. Thank you. Joined now by Lord Reynard, who is the Liberal Democrats' chief executive. So, runners up here. Tell me, what are the percentages? What's your share of the vote? How does it compare? How does the Tory Lib Dem share of the vote compare with 2005?
Well, we're 2% up, and the Conservatives are 3% up. I think that's not bad at the moment. We've gone up from 26 to 28, and the Conservatives, who may be doing well in the national opinion polls, they haven't done so well here. Hardly any improvement at all in the Conservative vote compared to the last general election. But the real disaster is, of course, for the Labour Party. Abject humiliation, I would say, to behind the Green Party and the BNP, and in 5th place. And that shows, you know, that support for the Labour Party is collapsing and going in the direction of the Liberal Democrats.
You say it's not bad. That suggests that you're quite relieved and you feared it might have been worse. Your leader's not doing as well as he might be.
I think he's doing well. We've gone up here.
You wouldn't say that, would you?
People didn't say we were going to go up. Many people said, no, we wouldn't do so well here. They're trying to say the Lib Dems are not doing well. But the truth is, we are. We've gone up here, and there was a by-election in Leicestershire today, which took 71% of the vote. In real elections, we're doing well. In the May elections, we did well, gaining council seats and beating the Labour Party across the whole of the country in the local elections this year.
Now, admit it, be candid. I've talked to some members of the Tory machine here who say that on the night of the Crewe and Nantwich by-election, you said to the Tories, wait till Henley, we'll get our revenge there. You thought you had a chance of winning here, really, didn't you? I've seen some of your leaflets where you said it was neck and neck.
Of course we wanted to win. Of course we always fight to win. And yes, of course I said to the Conservatives in Crewe, we'll see them here in Henley. Now in Crewe they said there was a big swing to the Conservatives. But here in Henley, in the south of England, there's been virtually no swing to the Conservatives at all at the expense of the Liberal Democrats. Indeed, we've both gone up by about the same amount. I think it's a real failure for the Conservatives, who've also, of course, failed to put forward any single policy
a failure,
during
they've
the course
won.
of the by-election.
What do you mean a failure?
Well,
how can you say it's a failure?
Compared to the last general election,
Not a failure.
They're saying
They've
they
got
are
up to
doing
about
better.
57% of the vote.
But they were 55 here in the general election.
Well, they've gone up.
That's hardly at all, when they're supposedly doing better in the polls. And if this had been Crewe and Nantwich, they'd have won by 16 or 20,000, not by 10,000.
Well, in fairness, you know, it's hard to go up when you're already 53.5%. But anyway, Lord Reynard, thank you very much indeed. Nice talking to you. Well, there we have Lord Reynard putting, I have to say, an interesting spin on the numbers there, saying it was a bad result for the Tories. Let's not forget the Tories have won here. They have increased their share of the vote. The Liberal Democrats have, admittedly, increased their share. But the big story, I think, on the day of Gordon Brown's first anniversary in 10 Downing Street is, I think we can credit Lord Reynard with an accurate description there. Abject humiliation for Gordon Brown. Not third, not fourth, but fifth in this by-election. The cash-strapped Labour Party has lost £500. They've lost their deposit, beaten by the Green Party and the British National Party. Labour absolutely crushed. OK, it's a safe Tory seat, but they weren't even third, they weren't even fourth. Labour lost their deposit and they are in fifth place, beaten by the Greens and the British National Party. What a horrible anniversary for Gordon Brown.
And as we just said, we just heard the Liberal Democrats describing this as abject humiliation. And it's quite interesting, we're listening to Martin Salter saying we had absolutely no chance whatsoever. I mean, they came in fifth place. Fifth place. Do you think they can believe that?
Well, no, they're shocked. I mean, throughout the evening, obviously, as you'd expect, we've been taking soundings from all the main parties. Now, Labour, Labour feared early on they might lose their deposit. Then they began to fear that they might become fourth, pushed into fourth by the Green Party. It was only literally a minute or two before the result was declared that we learned the full scale of Labour's humiliation, pushed into fifth place by the BNP, the British National Party. Labour, just to remind everyone, Labour's candidate polled only just over 1,000 votes, whereas the Green Party were over 1,300 and the BNP over 1,200. A terrible result for Labour, albeit in a safe Conservative seat. Fifth place for Gordon Brown. Martin Salter was trying to say it wasn't about tax, but that is certainly the message from the Tories tonight. Get off our backs, stop the tax rises. That was the message from the victorious Tory candidate, John Howell.
Great, thank you very much. Jon Craig, the Sky's chief political correspondent in Henley on Thames. So let's just get a recap on this story and bring you the numbers then. The Henley by-election has been won by the Conservatives. They won this with a massive majority. They got 19,796. Labour took not the second, not the third, not the fourth, but the fifth place. They were beaten by the Liberal Democrats, by the Green Party and by the British National Party. The Labour Party got just 1,066 votes. And we've heard some comments in the last few minutes. We heard from the Liberal Democrats who described this as an abject humiliation for Labour. We heard from Labour, from Martin Salter, who said that he blamed it on a nasty campaign by the Liberal Democrats. He said there were several reasons. He said the Liberal Democrats had launched a dirty campaign. He said that it was also down to things like the credit crunch, that the Labour Party was taking the flak because of things that are happening with the credit crunch and the fact that people have less money in their pockets. And there, as you can see on your screen, the share of the vote, 56.95% for the Conservatives. You can barely see Labour's there, 3.07%. The Liberal Democrats, 27.85%. So John Howell is the new MP for Henley on Thames, replacing Boris Johnson, who has now become the Mayor of London. So just to recap that story then, Henley on Thames, held by the Conservatives, a very safe Tory seat. They have won this with 19,796 votes, compared to Labour, who came in fifth place with 1,066 votes. Obviously not very good news at all for Gordon Brown this morning, who was celebrating, or maybe not celebrating, his first anniversary in the job as Prime Minister. Hello, you're watching Sky News. It's coming up to 2 o'clock. Here's what's coming up for you in the next hour. A grim first anniversary for Gordon Brown as Labour come 5th in the Henley by-election. Plus, new evidence of the violence suffered under Robert Mugabe's regime, and a look at what's happening with this morning's newspapers. Stay with us.
Tonight, over the Swiss Alps, we'll see changeable conditions. Settling later.
Well, there's some rain around tonight for England, and it's drying up, clearing up over the north and in Scotland. It looks like there's a lot of thundery weather developing over the Alpine states to run through the night across to Russia. The rain over Ireland and Britain on a jet stream coming in from the Atlantic is now closing out, which was a nice fine area of southeast weather. The southwesterly wind is picking up too, so overnight a good drop of rain in the south, which by Friday morning's largely gone to the continent, leaving some bits and pieces of drizzle in the south, otherwise dry fine start, but more rain on that jet stream from the Atlantic into Ireland, spending its day crossing Scotland and the western parts of Britain, but beginning to peter out in England, nevertheless occasionally interfering with events over southern England, Glastonbury, Wimbledon and so on. Southwesterly wind, so if the sun does break through, it'll feel quite sticky, and over the weekend, pleasant enough over England and Wales, but on Sunday probably some rain developing for Ireland and Scotland. So nothing special weekend, but not too bad, hot through the Mediterranean.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
On Sky News at 2 o'clock, breaking news this hour. The Conservatives win the Henley by-election. Labour come 5th on the first anniversary of Gordon Brown's premiership. Also this morning, Mugabe attacks Gordon Brown, the African Union, and threatens no negotiation if the world interferes in Zimbabwe.
It's those in number 10 Downing Street. The demons in number 10 Downing Street must be exorcised by someone.
His comments come as Sky News sees firsthand the violence of his regime and the terror of those who dare to oppose him. Also this hour, vile and despicable. Neil Entwistle is jailed for life. His victims' families say they face an eternity of emptiness. And in sport, Spain beat Russia to reach the final of Euro 2008.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News.
Well, then our top story at 2 o'clock, that breaking news that you can see on your screen. Gordon Brown has today marked his first year in office by seeing Labour beaten not into second, third or even fourth, but 5th place in the Henley-on-Thames by-election. Labour candidate Richard Mackenzie came behind the British National Party and the Greens. Well, here are the results that we got a little bit earlier. Then the Liberal Democrats came second, the Conservatives came top. Look at that, 19,796. Of course, this is a safe Conservative seat. They were always expected to win, but this a massive majority. Labour, 1,066. The Liberal Democrats came with 9,680. The Conservatives were majority there of 10,116. Now, we had some quite interesting comments from the Liberal Democrats. They said that this was an abject humiliation for Labour. They said that, Labour said this was down to a nasty campaign by the Liberal Democrats. They were blaming the Liberal Democrats quite strongly. They said it had been a dirty campaign. And Martin Salter, who was there speaking to us from Labour, said we had absolutely no chance whatsoever. Well, this is John Howell now, who takes over as the MP for Henley-on-Thames. The by-election, of course, was caused by Boris Johnson, who resigned to become Mayor of London. So just to recap then, that breaking news then, as you can see on your screen, that the Conservatives have held Henley-on-Thames, a safe Conservative seat, and they have held it with a massive majority of more than 10,000. They won with 19,796. Well, we can go now to Sky's chief political correspondent, Jon Craig. He's in Henley-on-Thames for us this morning. He's been following this election all morning. So, John, it wasn't a surprise that the Conservatives won, but I guess it was a surprise, especially for Gordon Brown, that he came in 5th place, and especially not good news for him on the first anniversary of his premiership.
It's a shock, it's a sensation, and it is a humiliation for Gordon Brown. On the very day, the exact anniversary, 27th of June last year, Gordon Brown took over from Tony Blair as Prime Minister. 1 year on, the Labour Party have been pushed into 5th place in a by-election. The Tories comfortably held this seat. They cruised home, majority of just over 10,000, down slightly. It was nearly 13,000 last time, but the turnout was down. Turnout was just over 50%. The Liberal Democrats came in second, so we've got the Conservatives on 19,796, then the Lib Dems 9,680. Then in third place we have the Green Party 1,321. In fourth place, ahead of Labour, the British National Party, 1,243, and the Labour candidate Richard Mackenzie polled just 1,086 votes. So Labour barely scraped above the 1,000 mark. This in a seat where, OK, they were third last time in 2005, but last time they polled nearly 8,000 votes. The Labour vote here has absolutely collapsed. They have lost their deposit. Not the first time they've lost their deposit in a safe Tory or Liberal Democrat seat, but it is a dreadful result for Labour. And the winning candidate, John Howell, told me a short time ago, he also said it in his speech from the platform tonight, he said, this is a message to Gordon Brown, get off our backs, stop the tax rises. And when I asked him what he was going to campaign on when he gets to Parliament next week, he said he's going to start campaigning against road taxes, car taxes, fuel prices. The Tories believe this is the issue on which they have won this election. Let's not forget we are in South Oxfordshire, we're in Thame this morning, in the constituency of Henley. It's a constituency, I'm told, of dozens and dozens and dozens of small villages, a very rural seat where people use their cars a lot, and clearly the motorist vote has sent Mr Howell to Westminster. He's a rich businessman, he's 53, he's an Oxfordshire County Councillor. He becomes the successor to Boris Johnson in a seat, of course, that was held for more than a quarter of a century by Michael Heseltine, the former Deputy Prime Minister. There will be a massive Labour inquest. Martin Salter, the Labour MP for Reading West, told us a short time ago that it was the credit crunch, it was the economy, and of course he claimed that it was all the international factors like oil prices and the credit crunch. But the Tories believe the issue is Gordon Brown's taxes, and of course this coincides with a very bad opinion poll for Mr Brown in today's Daily Telegraph, which shows his personal rating absolutely plummeting, even though it does show Labour's share of the vote on voting intentions up slightly. Well, opinion polls are one thing. This is the real thing here in Thame, in the Henley constituency. Labour have been pushed into 5th place. 5th place, their vote barely scraped above 1,000, where they polled 8,000 in 2005. 5th place behind the Greens and the British National Party for Gordon Brown and Labour.
OK, so Jon Craig there, live from Thame there this morning. Thank you very much for bringing us up to date with this. So just to recap on this story then, that the Conservatives have held Henley-on-Thames, the seat that was vacated by Boris Johnson becoming the Mayor of London. Henley-on-Thames, they won this with 19,796 votes compared to Labour, who came in 5th place with 1,066. They were beaten by the Liberal Democrats, by the Green Party and by the British National Party. The new MP now is John Howell, Conservative candidate, Conservative MP even for the Tories, who will now be going to Westminster to replace Boris Johnson and Labour on the first anniversary of Gordon Brown's premiership. Some pretty dismal news for the Prime Minister this morning. He has come, or his party rather, has come 5th in an election where they were probably expected to have come 3rd. We will, of course, keep you updated on this story, but there, as you can see on your screen, the numbers, 19,796. So a majority of the Conservatives over Labour of more than 10,000. Liberal Democrats came 2nd and Labour came 5th. And look at that, there's the share of the votes. The Conservatives got 56.95%. Labour got 3.07%, and you can barely see the bar there for them. And the Liberal Democrats got 27.85%. The Liberal Democrats seemed quite gleefully when they appeared on camera before, telling us that this was an abject humiliation for Labour. The Labour admitted to us when we spoke to them, we had absolutely no chance whatsoever. So just to recap on that then, the Conservatives have held the seat of Henley on Thames, and we will keep you up to date on any developments with this as and when we get them.